So it's Friday, the 15th of August, and I'm currently sitting in my home church where my ministry journey began, where I first sensed the call to ministry. And now, today, I'm about to head off to do my final candidates conference for my full-time Word and Sacrament ministry. Now, candidates conferences are great. They are 4 day for first years, 3 days for second and third years. But the conferences set up where all the year groups get together, all the ministry streams get together, and we talk about faith, we talk about where we are in our own journeys, we get lots of resources that can help us in our ministries and help form us as a minister. And we get that time together to share and worship together and to do all the things that sometimes goes by the wayside when you're caught in a busy time of ministry. Now this weekend is jam-packed, they always are. There's lots of things on, there's lots to be doing, but it's also a time of relaxation and unwinding with your friends who perhaps you haven't seen since last year, or you've maybe seen them online or whatever, but we haven't really seen each other because this is people coming from all over the country, and I don't think there's any international delegates this year, but sometimes there are people coming from overseas as well to come and to share time together. So come with me and I'll take you along on the journey. I don't know how much of it we'll get to film, but we'll definitely try as much as possible to get you in there, and you can see what Candidates Conference, if you're thinking about ministry, is all about. St Andrews, for me, is one of those homes away from home. And I think every person in Scotland's got somewhere like that if you said to them, where else in Scotland would you like to be, or where would you like to retire to, or something like that, St Andrews is that place for me. And I think it's always been that. But to have the conference here in St Andrews is another good thing, because it means I can make this week an excuse for another holiday and I can stay up here. We come up every single year, me and my family, and it's good to be here for the week, but also it's good to have the gathering here, and it feels like kind of home territory, even though it's miles away from where I usually am. So yeah, it's kind of one of those kind of feathers in the cap for me, getting to come up here to such a beautiful place. St Andrews is such a beautiful place, and it's such a nice time of the year as well. It's really always nice in St Andrews. There's no good in kidding. I'm not really up in the winter or anything like that, but it's definitely a place where I like to spend as much time as I humanly possibly can, even although I'm probably only up for about a week of a year. But another excuse to come up for the gathering is much appreciated. This year, the process, the theme that we're talking about is kind of journeying. So we're journeying from one place to another. This morning, though, we're talking about mission mainly. We're talking about what it is, how we're going to be, what do we mean when we say mission, and how do we do that? And then this afternoon, we're talking about moving from a position of need to moving to a position of giving. And then also this afternoon, we have a session on planning, or moving from planning to action. Well, good evening, folks. It's almost the end of the first day. In fact, it's almost the end of the entire day, and I'm trying to keep it down a wee bit because there are people in their beds sleeping at this point. But I'm just getting to mine, and I am knackered at the end of the first day. So the theme that we thought it was about was correct. It is about journeying, but it's more so about the journey across bridges, from getting from one place to the other. And we'll focus particularly today on priority areas where there are needs that are the highest, and where people are in need of the help of the church. How do we do that? How do we get people from a place of need to a place of giving? And we've also been talking a lot about how do we take people on that journey with us. You know, it's not just the people in the church, it's the people in the community as well. The other thing we've talked about is looking at, you know, the ABCD approach, asset-based community development, looking at the assets that you have within your community to help develop on the needs that are in your community. Now, I have a first-hand experience of working in a priority area because my home church was deemed a priority area and they'd done a lot of the asset-based community development stuff before. So I had lots to talk about when it came to that one. But how do we get out of people's way when they have the ideas, and how do we allow them and enable them to do the work that they want to and they are able to do? So it's been a busy day, it's been a full day, it's been a good day to catch up with people, and I'm sure tomorrow is going to be exactly the same. Oh, good morning, it's Sunday morning and I'm just heading over just now to where we meet for our conference sessions. Breakfast is still kind of happening over the road, but I'm just heading over now to get set up for the rest of today. So of course it's Sunday, so worship's going to be a big part of what we're doing today, but also we're going to have our learning streams today, which is the classes that we get the option of. So there's different options to pick from, and I have chosen Unsteady to Steadfast, partly because I'm a Boys Brigade boy and, you know, steadfast, that's the part of the Boys Brigade motto, sure and steadfast, so had to pick that. And also because it's probably going to be about, you know, difficult times that we're facing as a church and how do we get to a sure footing. And I think that's probably the most relevant of topics right now. So it's pretty much that all day. We'll be in our learning streams, our groups that have picked the same options as us, and we'll be doing that for majority of the day until about 5 o'clock really. But we'll also start with worship and we'll be closing with worship, because really that's the most important thing, isn't it, when we're at a candidates conference full of training ministers and readers and OLMs and deacons and all these things. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we're just out the lunchtime session now, or we're just about to get our lunch anyway in the next half hour or so. And it's been a fantastic first session talking about that, going from unsteady to steadfast. But we started where we should have started, which is talking about mission and talking about where God is at and what's important, you know. And we talked about the 5 marks of mission, and are they really realistic things that we should be aiming for, or do they hem us in more than what Scripture allows us to do, or the richness of Scripture has to offer us? And we've looked at statistics, we've looked at where we are in practical terms, you know, the evidence of things. We've looked at where the church has been declining, not just us, but similar churches over the years from, you know, from the 1900s onwards really is where we've had the most decline, and or 1960s really, but we've started to decline at that point. But I think what we've been talking about has been really on the mark and interesting, and we've been talking about the decline part. After lunch, we'll be talking a bit more about where we go from here and where churches are doing things well, what's working, where we're having those professions of faith, people coming into the church from outside, the people who haven't heard the gospel message and it's reaching them, how it's reaching them, and how do we get it out there? Because ultimately that's what it's about. It's not about the numbers, it's not about growing the church, it's not about having bums on seats, it's not about putting money in our coffers. It's all about how do we reach these people with the gospel message. So I'm looking forward to this afternoon session. It's been a good early session, and we'll see what that has in store for us today. But first, I'm going to get some lunch because I am starving.
Hello, Aaron's TikTokers. You're not live, right?
Aye.
Are you? Why would somebody want to watch you eat live?
So it's just gone the end of day 2 and it's been a great day. A lot to think about, a lot of stuff weighing heavily, and thinking about lots of different ways that we can make our churches not successful as such, but share the gospel message better, and why that's important. It's not important for building a church, it's not important for putting bums on seats or putting money in plates. It's important because everybody has the right to the gospel message, just the same as we do, and it's our jobs then to provide that opportunity for people to get that access, the same access that we have to God. And it's been good. It's been a reflective day. I've thought a lot about a lot of different aspects of ministry, and I think the thing that's really sticking out for me is all these things are really well and good, but you never know what's going to really work until you set it into practice in your own context, your own congregation. And there's 2 kind of key themes that have came out of, you need to, 1, know yourself. You need to know who you are as an individual. But 2, you need to know your context. And how those 2 fit together is how your ministry will grow. And that's what's really came out of today for me. It's about being yourself, it's about being authentic in your day-to-day and in your preaching, and it's about being, allowing that worship to extend out into your context. I'm just going to go back, get some dinner now, and have a wee bit more time to reflect before this evening's entertainment, which is organised by some of the other third years. It seems like only yesterday that we were here as first year candidates who didn't really know what was going on, and now we're getting sent off into another journey, and the schools went back this week as well, so you've had a lot of kids going from being the big fish in the wee pond to being the wee fish in the big pond. And I think that's kind of how I'm feeling right at this moment, as I'm going from I'm the big fish in the big pond right now, or the big fish in the wee pond right now, sorry, going to be the big wee fish in the big pond. And then I'll do that again at the end of probation. So yeah, what's going through my head at the minute, I don't know if any of this is making sense or whether it will make any sense, but there's lots and lots to think about and reflect on. And I think overall the journey for me has been a good one. It's been enjoyable. It's not been too arduous. There's been challenges, but it's not been too arduous. And I'm ready now to take that step into the next phase of this journey. I'm going to go and get ready now. One of the things I don't think I have talked much about is the idea of the bridges. So one of the themes that we're talking about is the bridge, the connectors between one place and the next. And it's not just about being in the first place and moving to the second place or trying to get away from it, but it's about being that bridge, that connector, the connection road. Moving from one place to the next place doesn't necessarily mean that the old place was bad or negative. It just means that we're moving on a journey, and the candidates process is a journey. It's a journey for me, it's a journey for all the other candidates that are on it, and we journey together and we journey on our own. And some of those bridges, some of those paths that we've walked have been smooth for some of us. Some of them have been difficult and hard to tread on, and others have been uneasy underfoot. But we all come through the process, we all get so far with it, and we have our ups and our downs, we have our rough times and our smooth times, and but it's all part of that journey. And the journey itself is as much part of the process or part of the experience and the formation of being a minister than anything else. So we can never take away that idea that the process is just about as important, or the pathway that we walk, the progress that we make is just as important as the destination that we're trying to get to. So looking forward to tomorrow then. Tomorrow is the last day of the conference, sadly. And after our devotional time and our worship, the themes for the day are from isolation to partnership. So I'm not really sure what that might entail. Then we move on to from earth to as it is in heaven. Of course, quoting from the Lord's Prayer. So how do we go from an earthly, worldly view to a heavenly one? I'm assuming, of course, that could be totally wrong, and you'll find out later on in this video if I've got that totally wrong, but there you go. Then this afternoon, or tomorrow afternoon I should say, sorry, we also have reflections from the moderator. So the moderator of the Church of Scotland, who is currently the Reverend Rosie Frew, she will come, she will talk to us, she'll try and gee us up, give us a wee bit of encouragement and inspiration, and talk to us about what our ministry might entail in the future and where she sees the church going, whatever it is that she wants to tell us. Hopefully all positive, because of course the Church of Scotland isn't in the most positive of situations at the minute. We then have what's called the marketplace, and this is where all these different organisations come in and effectively set up stalls and give us resources and contacts for things that we might find useful in our ministries and even in our placements for the ones that are still in placements. But this is usually where we stock up on notepads and pens for the year ahead and use them in our ministry, which are just as useful as the contacts and the resources that they're there to advertise as well. So never underestimate the power of a free notebook. Our final topic of the day is from walking the walk to talking the talk. Again, it's all well and good us saying all these things and talking about these things in candidates conference, but how do we then go and put that into practice? How do we take that out into the world, into our parishes, into our ministries, whatever they may be, whatever they may look like, in whatever contexts they may be, and how do we make that accessible? How do we make the gospel accessible to people? How do we focus on that mission and become that bridge that we're talking about, that bridge between this place and the next place for people to get there? And of course, the very last thing is worship with communion, which is led by the moderator. It's always a special moment, that communion, at the end of the candidates gathering, where you always share in communion. It's always special. But when you're with fellow candidates who you spent the weekend with, who you know their struggles, who are going through the same things as you, or sometimes worse, or sometimes, just different. But when you've worked together with all these people, it's definitely a special moment to share in that communion with them, because you're sharing in that communion with people who understand where you've been and your context, and they understand a bit about you. They know your flaws, they know your weaknesses, but they also know your strengths and your character. And there's just something a bit more special about that intimate moment than is normally the case in communion, although communion is such a special time for most folk anyway. But that's effectively what tomorrow has in store for us. So with that said, I'm going to get to my bed, get some sleep tonight, and get ready for a full final day tomorrow. So it's the final morning now, and let's go in and see what today's got in store for us. So in the first part of today, we've been speaking all about how do we reach out to people and look at their need rather than what we think that they need. We've looked at Christian Aid, we've looked at, how do we help people as faith-based mission, but not too preachy, as we like. So often we talk about doing mission to people, and really it should be mission with people, and that's really been the kind of key focus of this morning's first session. The next session we had focused on including everybody, so it was all EDI. It was about equality, diversity, inclusion, and how do we deal with different scenarios as ministers, but from a faith-based perspective. And some really difficult things came up in that situation or that session, where we spoke about different situations that are not unheard of. They're, in fact, sadly, too often they're heard of. But how do we treat everybody fairly, but also understand that we're coming from a faith perspective, and realising when that matters to come from a faith perspective and when it doesn't. And when we're doing mission and when we are out there trying to help people, the faith that we are expressing is in our actions, not necessarily in our words. And we are sharing the gospel by what we do rather than what we say. So that's been the first part of today. And then, interestingly enough, after the marketplace and lunch, which is going on just as we speak, after that we're going to talk about not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. So not just sharing the gospel with our words, but how do we live out that gospel? How do we do that in our day-to-day lives? And I think at this stage in the game, everybody's a bit tired, everybody's a bit exhausted. It's been a long couple of days, been a good couple of days, been full of excitement and activities, but everybody's trying to do everything they can just to stay awake at this point. But I'm going to go and grab some lunch and go on with the last half of the day ahead.
And that's it, folks. That's a wrap. That's the end of Candidates Conference. We've just finished with communion, led by the moderator, the Right Reverend Rosie Frew, and it was a lovely time. It was a lovely, peaceful time, and a nice way to bring the conference to an end. I think one of the things that's been playing on my mind is now, where do we go from here? So where do we take things? Where do we move? You know, we're talking about journeys, we're talking about bridges, we're talking about going on that journey, and this is it. This is the end of the training wheels, shall we say? The training wheels now start to come off, and you're still on or here's a better way of putting it. The training wheels are still there, but they're elevated off the ground, and that's the stage we're at on riding this bike. That's probably the best way of coming up with an analogy on the spot. But it's been a fantastic weekend. It's been a fantastic experience, and yeah, now just trying to wrap our heads around the year ahead. Whether it's not going to be easier, but there's going to be less stuff to do. So it is going to be easier because there's less stuff to do. It's more straightforward. So breathe, get on with it, and we'll see what the next chapter has in store.